Hello, this is Chris Brennan with Daringer, Route Development Manager, Trans-Pacific Trade. Today I also have with me Matt Parrott, Director of Distribution, and we're going to take a kind of a deep dive into Incoterms. So maybe we take a deeper dive into FOB to start and just more detailed explanation of FOB.
Yeah, sure, Chris, and that's perfect because if you're importing from China into the United States, we really would recommend that you use FOB, free on board, as a term. Now, why would I recommend that? So free on board means that the risk of that shipment transfers from the seller of the goods to the buyer of the goods when the container actually passes across the bow of the ship. A crane picks up that container from the container yard, picks it up, puts it on the ship. If the container drops that ship and it falls on the bow, if it falls off of the ship and onto the container yard, the seller is responsible for those goods. If it falls on the ship, then the buyer is responsible for those goods. So let's break that down a little bit more. So the pre-carriage in this instance would be paid for by the seller. So they would have to pack the goods for export. And you'll hear me say that a lot because packing the goods for export means that they're appropriately packed for the goods that you're selling. So the seller has to appropriately pack it for export, put the goods in the container, truck the goods over to the container yard, and pay for the goods to be picked up and put on the boat. Within that, each country has differing and varying requirements for customs clearance on the export side. So if you buy FOB, that means that your goods are going to be on the boat. They get exported over to the United States. They get taken off the boat, put in the container yard, and then you customs clear them, arrange delivery to the door, and all of that. So with the FOB Incoterm, you slice that up where the seller pays to pick up the goods, make sure they're packed, get them on the boat. Then the risk transfers from the seller to the buyer, and the buyer has to do everything else, including pay the duty and get it to their door. So under that scenario, the buyer is going to want to make sure that they have very strong all risk marine insurance in place, because if that container washes over the side of the deck on the way over, it's going to be a total loss. And if there's no insurance, then the buyer is going to be out of luck.
Okay, and then from looking, same question, but from an EXWorks standpoint, and even transfer risk where it is for supplier, buyer, maybe just go into an EXWorks definition.
Sure, so EXWorks is also a very popular Incoterm. I'm going to switch and go over to Europe and say that we're buying, in Amsterdam, and we're sending the goods over Rotterdam and sending them into New York port and then over to Albany, New York, just for ease of reference. So under EXWorks terms, the seller is responsible to pack the goods properly for export. I went into why I'm saying that specifically, but they're always responsible to pack the goods appropriately. So they pack the goods, get them on their dock. In this instance, the buyer is responsible for everything else. The buyer has to arrange to get that container positioned at the seller's dock when they ask to have it there, and everything else. They have to arrange the export customs clearance, the dray over to Rotterdam, get it put on the boat, and have the ocean freight go over to New York, get it off the boat, customs clear it, and deliver it to Albany. So why did I use Europe as an example for something that's an EXWorks term? The customs clearance in Europe is pretty similar to the export customs clearance in the US, and it's something that isn't as complex and is fairly straightforward, and you are okay to use an EXWorks Incoterms out of Europe more so than you would be in Asia, because it's more similar to the US sort of standards and policies. So you could be fine going with EXWorks Amsterdam, buying goods and getting them and importing them into the United States.